Also to condemn the issue being politicised by Netanyahu, who tried to put the increase in anti-Semitism and this attack down to the Palestine solidarity movement, which obviously is not the case. Unfortunately, as I said, all hate crime against minorities is on the increase. I also want to say how concerned I am and how I'm pleading with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach to intervene in the case of the hunger strikers in the UK from the Palestine Solidarity Movement. We have a history in this country of an acute understanding of the hunger strike and the impact that it can have, and the health of all of those people has passed a certain point where they are in imminent danger of dying. We've had a situation where British governments before let people die in hunger strike. To reiterate that these people are on remand, they haven't been tried, they're completely innocent until, proven guilty. But even so, on a human rights level, the way that they have been ignored by the Labour government is absolutely reprehensible, and I'm going to be asking the Taoiseach and Taoiseach to intervene very speedily. There is an Irish citizen who's also on trial on very similar charges, not on hunger strike, but we want to ensure that every prisoner, they should be released. There's no question of that, and we need to protect people who are imprisoned. Lastly, the final issue I'd raise is about my bill to ban fox hunting. Will be debated tomorrow morning. It's not fully certain yet what the stance of the three parties will be. But to say that when 73% of people have expressed opposition to fox hunting, 81% when you exclude don't knows, it's very clear the majority of people in all demographics, ages, regions, genders are utterly opposed to it, rural and urban, and yet for some reason the three big parties are maintaining it and have not said that they will drop the whip, ironically the whip that's used for metaphor from fox hunting. And we're calling for a free vote. And just to say as well that I've talked to Fianna Fáil TDs who want to vote. I've been told that about 15 to 16 Fianna Fáil TDs want to vote for the bill. I've talked to Fine Gael TDs who want a free vote as well. I think Barry Ward has spoken out publicly or in an email to a constituent at least on this and has asked for a free vote. And in relation to Sinn Féin, just very quickly, I think most people in society would expect Sinn Féin to be against blood sports. And certainly in the election, so many of them have expressed opposition publicly over the years. People voted thinking they were, and to then find out that they may whip their members into line on this, they need to allow a free vote. They didn't have an Ardèche, they cancelled it for other reasons, so weren't able to change their position. So on that basis, they have a very good reason to allow a free vote, and I'm hoping still that they will, because we need to end this barbaric practice. It doesn't have any place in a civilised society, and we're an outlier, and we're being contacted by so many farmers who totally abhor it as well. So we'll have a huge gallery full of people tomorrow to listen to the debate, and we're hoping that we can move on into a more enlightened era for animal rights.
Go fight over it then.
Okay, yeah, I just also want to reiterate our horror at the massacre that took place in Bondi Beach, and to extend our sympathies to the families of the victims and the injured. Anti-Semitic violence and anti-Semitism have absolutely no place in a civilised world. They should be condemned without hesitation. It is also vitally important that there isn't, as has happened almost immediately after this tragic event, it's vitally important that there's not an attempt, as we saw from Netanyahu, to try and collapse the distinction between absolutely legitimate criticism of the Israeli state's policies of apartheid, its genocidal actions against the Palestinian people, and anti-Semitism. They are two very, very different things. And it's disappointing, quite frankly, that Jim O'Callaghan has lent into collapsing that important distinction. In our view, we oppose all forms of racism, anti-Semitism, racism, prejudice, discrimination against anybody. But that is a very different thing from, in fact, precisely it is because of our opposition to all forms of racism that we are deeply critical of the Israeli regime's apartheid and racist policies towards Palestinians. And it is wrong for the Minister for Justice to sort of collapse or muddy the waters between those two things, and we'd appeal to him not to do that. The other thing I just want to say is that we fully endorse the call by the Irish Congress of Trade Unions for very significant pay increases for workers in the context of the spiralling cost of living crisis and rising inflation. The government very, very badly let down working people and the less well off. In the budget, they gave massive handouts to developers, to certain business interests in the hundreds of millions, but left ordinary workers and the less well off significantly worse off against the background of rising inflation. I note, for example, there's an appropriations bill today where the government will be moving around fairly large sums of money at the end of the year. That could have been an opportunity for them to make recompense for how badly they left workers and the less well off, those struggling with the cost of living crisis, to make good to them. But of course they haven't done that. But we absolutely support this move by the trade union movement to demand pay increases so that workers and the least well off can actually keep pace with the spiralling cost of living.
Just briefly, firstly on Jim O'Callaghan, I think it's quite disgusting to see Jim O'Callaghan try to elevate himself to the position of leader of Fianna Fáil by trampling on the rights of the most vulnerable people in this country and by joining in an assault on the European Convention of Human Rights along with the British Tories. It is the most blatant cynicism that he's engaged in, blatant scapegoating of asylum seekers that has no basis in fact whatsoever. He knows that the number of asylum seekers and refugees has come down year on year on year. He knows that asylum seekers make up a relatively small minority of total immigration. He knows that total immigration numbers are actually coming down, and yet he wants to scapegoat asylum seekers for supposedly undermining social cohesion. I mean, it is so blatant what he is involved in. Everyone should see straight through it. This is about his own personal political career. It's about distracting from the failures of Fianna Fáil in government. It's about distracting from the fact that those who are responsible for the housing crisis are not vulnerable asylum seekers, but rather the friends of Fianna Fáil, the developers, the big corporate landlords, those who have been profiting from the housing crisis. It is shocking to see Jim O'Callaghan, as Minister for Justice, now join in with the British Tories, led by the Danes, in criticising and attempting to undermine the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, it's deeply ironic. We're often criticised for being insufficiently pro-European because we oppose the agenda of militarisation in Europe, we oppose the support to Israel in Europe, we oppose Fortress Europe policies. But now you have the Minister for Justice leading an onslaught, or part of an onslaught, on basic human rights that have been vital, actually, as Liam Herrick points out very well in the Irish Times today, in terms of various Irish people asserting their human rights. The final, ironic point is that I think it's clear in the interview that Jim O'Callaghan correctly criticises anti-Semitism, but effectively is trying to tie the Palestine Solidarity Movement to that anti-Semitism and suggesting that it is wrong to be anti-Zionist or illegitimate to be anti-Zionist, to suggest that this apartheid genocidal state should not exist, and strongly suggesting that that equates to anti-Semitism, when the people he is dog-whistling to are the ones who are anti-Semites in this country. It's the far right. If you look at who had an anti-Semitic reaction to the horror that happened in Bondi Beach. It's the far right, the same people who are involved in whipping up violence against asylum seekers, targeting IPAS centres for attack, and so on. And that's the gallery that he's playing to, is those who are actually anti-Semites. Just very briefly, to register my disappointment on what unfolded over the weekend in terms of the National Gender Service saying we're closing our waiting lists from March. We have a country which is the worst in all of the European Union for trans healthcare. 2 weeks ago, we passed a progressive, good motion in the Dáil calling for investment in healthcare, calling to tackle the situation where many people are waiting 10 years or even 15 years or longer to access healthcare. And then 2 weeks later, the National Gender Service comes out and says, oh, we're closing our waiting list, which obviously caused panic in the trans community. Since then, the HSE has come out and said, oh, actually, this is not in their gift. They can't just go around closing the waiting list by themselves. But it illustrates like a fundamental dysfunction in the way that our current healthcare system for trans people is set up.
Just on the fox hunting bill, I suppose, are you optimistic about how things will go in terms of whether there will be progress on that?
I don't know. I know a lot of TDs want to support it because they know it doesn't have very much support in society at all. I definitely think we've made a major breakthrough in attitudes on this. I think the social media campaign, hundreds of emails to all TDs, has had an impact. A number of, well-known figures speaking out on it, social media influencers. So, like for example, the Irish Council Against Blood Sports has said in Britain there was 11 bills before fox hunting was banned, right? And interestingly, they informed me that Margaret Thatcher crossed the floor to vote against blood sports with the Labour government in the 1970s, which was very surprising, but it just shows you how people do want to actually a free vote on this. I'm going to be sitting beside, when we vote tomorrow night, a whole load of Sinn Féin TDs, and I know they're going to be really, really uncomfortable because I know their stance. However, it seems that a couple of people in Sinn Féin are ruling the roost on this, and I don't know why. There's money in this for hunt clubs. There's tourism coming over from the UK because it's banned there. Is that the reason? Because it doesn't have support in rural areas either, where the hunt destroy a lot of property, trespass and upset a lot of livestock. So it really is unfathomable, and it seems to be a tiny cohort of money making that's going on. Some traditions, it's time for them to go. Oh, rocketed. No. Well, Hitler was apparently a vegetarian, but he's not gone up in my estimation, but no. But I think it's interesting when the whip is lifted that people, can respond in a different way. And this isn't about a budget. It's not about the economy. It's not about the programme for government. So there isn't a reason why they wouldn't allow a free vote. But there's a powerful, equestrian lobby. But there's a lot of people in the equestrian who'll be here tomorrow who oppose. You can do drag hunting. There's another phenomenon now of clean boot hunting in the UK. So there's plenty of alternatives to go out on horses, to be in the countryside, to be, running around the place if that's what people want to do. Plus, loads of working class kids would love a chance to foster the love of horses in this country. It's very much the preserve of the elite still. Even in terms of the pony clubs, there's plenty of scope for increasing our horse, pastime.
Just on a separate matter, Social Democrats right before you, they were saying on this income hike to electricity bills that the data centres should foot the bill for it to improve infrastructure. Is that a position you would agree with?
Paul? Sorry.
You go ahead, John.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, data centres make no sense from the point of view of ordinary people in this country. They make no sense from a climate point of view. They make no sense from a housing crisis point of view, because they're actually taking electricity that is meant to be used for new housing developments. And they make no sense from the point of view of cost of living. The existence of so many data centres is driving up bills for people. We are all paying extra because these data centres are taking so much of our electricity. What we heard over the weekend was new data centres coming online that are even bigger than the current ones that we have, that will effectively come close to doubling the amount of electricity that is going to data centres. This is absolutely crazy. At the very least, they should be paying their way on this.